Welcome to a Faithful God podcast. I'm your host, Tammy Rotzel, and today on the show, we're going to talk about stepping outside our comfort zones in order to experience all God has for us. So grab those earbuds and your favorite beverage and join me for today's show. Well, hey friend, welcome back. Happy Friday. I hope this week is ending out just the way you want it to. I hope it's been a good week for you. So listen, today we're going to get into one of my all-time favorite passages in the Bible, Psalm 32, verse 8 and 9. So if you want to follow along in your Bible, if you're somewhere where you can do this, be sure to just you can just click pause and then join me as soon as you're ready. But anyway, we're going to dive into this Bible verse. Now, let me tell you, this Bible verse was my part of my focus for the year several years ago. And my word was obedience. Now I've talked on the show about back in episode number, I believe it was number 87. Let me just look right now real quick here. It was 97. So if you go to footprintsofinspiration.com/97 to learn how to choose a focus for the year. And I'm not going to get into all of it, but a focus is more than just a word for the year. It also includes a Bible verse and a Christian affirmation, so the three crucial components to a focus of the year. So anyway, so in that I talked about it, and I did even mention this Bible verse. I'm pretty sure I did. But anyway, this Bible verse was part of my focus several years ago, and I take my focus for the year very seriously. And that year, my word was obedience. And so to anchor this verse to obedience was powerful, because throughout the year, as I wanted to put on the brakes, or I felt uncomfortable and thought, oh, no, God, I don't want to go here. I don't want to do this. God convicted me and reminded me that, wait a minute, Tammy, remember you said you were going to walk in obedience. And remember, I've given you this Bible verse. I've given you this promise as you choose to follow me, even when it's uncomfortable. So in the show today, we're going to uncover and dig into Psalm 32, verse 8 and 9. We're going to talk about what exactly God wants for you. We're going to talk about how to embrace discomfort. We'll talk about what you can expect as you walk through this. And then we'll wrap up with the story of Abraham and Isaac and the impossible decision or choice, I guess, the obedience that Abraham faced, in his life with Isaac. Having trouble speaking today with Isaac. So in Psalm chapter 32, verse 8 and 9, it says this: I hear the Lord saying, I will stay close to you, instructing and guiding you along the pathway for your life. I will advise you along the way and lead you forth with my eyes as your guide. So don't make it difficult. Don't be stubborn when I take you where you've not been before. Don't make me tug and pull you along. Just come with me. Oh, I'm telling you, this one is one of those that just really pulls at your heart, doesn't it? And like I said, when that was my focus for the year, several years back, there were many, many times that I really felt God leading me somewhere where I had no idea how it was going to play out. I didn't know what I was doing. All the things, all the fears, all the things, the self-doubt and the distractions and all the things that come up for each and every one of us. But God would convict my heart and say, wait, Tammy. Here we go. I'm going to guide you forth with my eyes as your guide. You don't need to know the whole picture. How many times have you stood on the sidelines, got stuck in what I call planning purgatory, waiting for all the answers before stepping out? Yeah, me too. But you see, that's not what God wants. He wants us to take action. He wants us to take that step. He wants us to get comfortable being uncomfortable, because he is going to guide us with his eyes. He is going to show us the way. He is going to provide the help. So don't make it difficult when he takes you places you've never been before. Just come with him. Just go with him, right? And so we've got to really embrace this passage for what it is, obedience and faith, right? We've got to learn to trust in God by stepping out. Friends, we've I just, I talk about this all the time, but we've got to get off the sidelines. You see, action brings clarity. You're not going to get clarity sitting on the sidelines. The only way you're going to get clarity in your life, the only way you're going to uncover what God has for you is by stepping off the sidelines. You can't sit in that comfort zone and expect to experience a transformation in your life. It's just not going to happen. Here's the thing, my friend. God cares more about your character than he does your comfort. Boom. Who needed to hear that today? He cares more about developing your character than he does your comfort. You've got to take on the mindset. You've got to understand that in order to experience this life God has for you, in order to experience peace in the midst of the pain, in order to experience that transformation that you want to see happen in your life, you've got to understand that God cares more about your character than he does your comfort. You've got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Stop sitting on the sidelines and waiting for everything to happen. Because it's not gonna serve you, my friend. It's not going to happen there. It's time to get into the deep water. Stop, treading water on the surface. It's time to get deeper. It's time to get comfortable being uncomfortable, because that's where God has change for you. That's where you'll experience everything that he has for you. Are you feeling unfulfilled right now? Stuck? Like you just don't know what way to go? Then step outside your comfort zone. Stop waiting back here to have all the answers, because you don't need them. All you have to do is take one step. Don't worry about the 20 steps that are needed to take this. We're just worrying about the first step. That's all we have to worry about. You see, as we choose to take that step outside our comfort zone, God will, like I said, action brings clarity, right? You'll get more clarity, and God will use it to refine you and shape you. You have to stop being afraid of making mistakes, because if you are walking close to God, those are never failures. A mistake is not a failure. It's a learning lesson. It's what teaches you where you're supposed to go next. It's what refines you. Learning lessons are beautiful opportunities. But learning lessons aren't found in the shallow waters. Learning lessons aren't found in your comfort zone. They're found out there. You've probably heard it said and know that gold, right? Gold, when you're talking about gold, it is refined in the fire, right? It's the deep fire where they turn up the temperature to refine it and shape it and mold it. It's the same things with our life. We've got to get into our discomfort. We've got to step outside our comfort zone, get uncomfortable to be refined. To really, really step into that life God has for us. In Hebrews chapter 12, verse 11, it says this: "For the time being, no discipline brings joy, but seems grievous and painful. But afterwards, it yields a peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. A harvest of fruit which consists in righteousness, in conformity to God's will and purpose, thought and action, resulting in right living and right standing with God." Discipline is hard. Fear of the unknown is hard. Getting uncomfortable is hard. But it's where we learn the most. It's where we get the clarity. It's where we find fulfillment. It's where we grow closer to God and deeper in that relationship with God. Got to stop treading on the surface, my friend. We've got to get off the sidelines, get comfortable being uncomfortable. I know I keep saying it, and I'm going to continue to say it until I get you to really take that step. It's so important, my friend. you're going to have fear and self-doubt. Those are things that I want you to understand right now, right? As long as we know this is happening, we can move forward. We know it's going to happen, right? This is something I talk about. In fact, I was just talking about to my Confident Prayer Warrior students is, Satan, the closer we grow to God, the more we step outside our comfort zone and step into where God is leading us, we're going to start hearing Satan in our ear. It's going to look like fear, the fear of the unknown, right? Fear. It's going to look like self-doubt. It's going to look like distraction and chaos. None of that comes from God. That all comes from Satan. But the cool thing is when we know this, when we understand this, that allows us to, that gives us all the power. That takes the power away from Satan. Doesn't matter. We don't, despite what we think, right? Despite what we think, we don't need to know the whole picture before stepping out. All we need is the next step. That's it. We just have to take that step. We have story after story after story in the Bible of men and women who did not know. They were afraid. They didn't know how it was going to play out. They had no idea why God was calling them to do some of the things that they did, or that he did call them to. And yet they stepped out in faith anyway. And we can see over and over and over again that God didn't leave them, that he led them with their eyes as their guide, right? Or with his eyes as their guide. They didn't make God tug and pull them. They just went with him. Friends, we've got to just go. We've got to stop throwing out all those yeah buts, right? I talk about yeah buts all the time. Yeah, but I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah, but I don't know what the whole plan is. Yeah, but whatever your yeah, but is. We've got to stop yeah, butting God and just saying, okay. Okay, God, this is uncomfortable. I'm stepping way outside my comfort zone, but I'm going to do it anyway because I trust you, Lord. What do we know? Trusting God isn't a feeling. It's a choice. And it's a choice we have to make over and over and over again. And the more we make it, the beautiful part about this, the thing that is just so beautiful to me is the more we make this choice, the closer we draw to God and the easier it becomes to step outside our comfort zone later on when he's calling us to. I love that. I love that about it because it's like, okay, now I can go back and go, oh yeah, remember when I chose to do it, even when I had all those yeah buts, and look the way God showed up. God will show up each and every time. We just have to trust him to do it. So in Genesis 22, we see God actually test Abraham. And this is a really hard test. At least it is for me. This was one of the passages in the Bible that was really hard for me to read because I just didn't understand the depth of it. So this is what chapter 22, verse 1 and 2 says. Sometime later, God tested Abraham's faith. Abraham, God called. Yes, he replied, here I am. Take your son, your only son, yes, Isaac, whom you love so much, and go to the land of Moriah. Go and sacrifice him as a burnt offering on the mountains, which I will show you. He asked him, can you imagine? God asked Abraham to sacrifice his only son, that son he had been waiting for so long. That son, as a matter of fact, when he and Abraham and his wife Sarah had been wanting this baby, and at 75 years old, God said to Abraham, I am going to give you a son. But here's the kicker. So 75 years, they had waited for a son, or for a child. At this point, they had given up. At 75 years old, they're thinking they are never going to have a child, though a child they so desperately, wanted. And at 75, God comes to Abraham and says, I'm going to give you a child. But it wasn't at 75 years old that he got the child. It was when he was 100. So 25 years later, Abraham and Sarah have a child. They have Isaac. And now God is asking him to sacrifice his son as a burnt offering. Now, here's the thing. God didn't do this as a way of tripping him up what am I trying to say? He didn't ask this of Abraham to trip him up. What he was doing, again, we go back to what I said before. God cared more about the character of Abraham than his comfort. You and I both know. I can't even begin to imagine God coming to me, and I'm sure you feel the same way, and saying, hey, I want you to offer your child as a sacrifice. And yet, what did Abraham do? He responded with faith and obedience. He trusted God, right? Lean not on your own understanding. He trusted God's understanding. He trusted God's will. He trusted God more than he trusted himself, which is what we need to do. And then he walked in obedience. I can't even begin to imagine how painful that must have felt, how awful that must have felt. And yet Abraham did it. He responded with faith and obedience. The other thing it does is it teaches us that it gives the provision. When God saw that Abraham said, okay, I'm going to follow you, God. I'm going to do this. And Abraham sets out and he gets to the place where he's going to go and he lays his son on this altar to sacrifice. Then God says, wait, stop. I'm going to give you, and he presents, I believe there was a sheep or a lamb over there for him to offer, as an offering. But God provided the offering that was needed because Abraham showed up, because he took that step outside his comfort zone, because he trusted God over himself. God showed up and provided everything that Abraham needed. And when we learn to walk in obedience, when we learn to get comfortable being uncomfortable, when we step out off the sidelines and into those deep waters, that's where we find the blessings. When we follow God, right? There are so many times in the Bible, so many instances in the Bible that we see an if-then situation. If you do this, then this will happen. What does that mean? That means we have to take action. It doesn't mean we sit on the sidelines and wait for God to bring all of it to us. That means we have to take an action. There's a step we must take. We've got to step off the sidelines. We got to go into those deep waters, because that's where God's blessings are found. That's where the transformation is found. That's where a fulfilling life is found. Now, I want to be very clear about something. We don't do it for the blessings. That's not the right heart. We don't go and do something because God's a divine ATM machine and going to give us all these things because, okay, I'm going to do it for that reason. But when we change our hearts, when we ask God to change our hearts, to really mature us and help us grow in faith, and we step out when God is calling us to, we have that faith of Abraham, that trust, that obedience that Abraham had. The blessings become a byproduct of the way we live our life. Does that make sense? We've got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. We have to have the faith of Abraham to say, this is not what I would do. This is not at all what I can't even begin to imagine the turmoil inside Abraham. How about you? That had to have been such a painful moment. And yet he did it anyway. He trusted God to refine him. He trusted God to provide. He trusted God to show up because he followed him to show up and take care of all of it. And God did. He said, no, no, no. All right, stop, right? Stop. No, you no longer have to sacrifice him. Take your son off of this. And now I provided a ram. It may have been a ram. I apologize. I should have read that part of it. And I didn't read that part of it. It's been a bit since I've read that part. But anyway, he provided the burnt offering, the offering instead of Isaac. Why? Because it was an if-then situation. Abraham chose to show up. He chose to be the man of God. He got comfortable being uncomfortable. He understood that God cared more about his character than his comfort. And when we understand that, my friend, when we take on that faith of Abraham, that's when things start to change for us. That's when we start to experience a transformation in our life. It's when we start to really start living that fulfilled life that God has for us. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. Lord knows. Look at Abraham. He was faced with an impossible decision, an impossible choice, an impossible command. And yet he took that step and he did it. He didn't know how it was going to turn out. He didn't sit there and say, all right, God, but show me how everything's going to play out before I take that step. God's going to take care of you too, my friend. You don't need to know the whole picture. All you have to do is be willing and take that step. Again, you don't have to know the whole thing. You have to trust that God will provide. He will provide everything you need, right? God doesn't call the equipped. He equips those he calls. And so we've got to step into the deep waters, because that's where a fulfilled life is. That's where the blessings are found. That's where true transformation is found. It's not found on the sidelines. You got to get comfortable being uncomfortable, my friend. You've got to get used to stepping out, even when you don't know the whole picture. So friend, I hope this prompted you today to step outside your comfort zone, to do something different. We just talked about this. As a matter of fact, we just talked about this in the Confident Prayer Warrior program. I was just doing a live for my VIP experience members, and really just encouraging them to step outside their comfort zone, to DSD. This is actually from someone else, a mentor of mine, business mentor. Some of you may if you're in business, you probably have heard of her, Amy Porterfield. But one of the things she teaches us, as I'm a student of one of her courses, or two of her courses actually. But anyway, one of the things she teaches us is to do something different. DSD, right? Do something different, to step outside our comfort zone, to experience more, to experience the life God has for us. And so we've got to do that. We've got to step outside our comfort zone to make something happen. We've got to stop sitting on the sidelines waiting for God to bring it all to us. We've got to get into those deep waters. Got to get into those deep waters where the blessings are, where the transformation is. You've got this, my friend. You've got this. Why? How do I know this? Because you have God within you. How do I know this? Because I know, as difficult as it is to take that first step, I promise you each step will get a little bit easier and easier and easier. That doesn't mean you won't go through hard times. It doesn't mean you won't be asked to do things that are uncomfortable or painful, just like Abraham when we talked about Abraham. But what it does mean is God is going to be with you every step of the way. I want to go back to Psalm 32, 8 and 9 and read it one more time for you. I hear the Lord saying, I will stay close to you, instructing and guiding you along the pathway for your life. I will advise you along the way and lead you forth with my eyes as your guide. So don't make it difficult. Don't be stubborn when I take you where you've not been before. Don't make me tug and pull you along. Just come with me. Just go with God today, my friend. Take that step. Get out of your comfort zone, because that's where you really start to experience the life God has for you. Friend, if this blessed you today, it would mean the world to me if you would share it with a friend. I would love that. Just take a quick screenshot or grab the link wherever you are listening and text it to a friend today. I would really appreciate that. My mission is to help women just like you, as many women as possible, to really learn how to step into the life that God has for them. And so by sharing this episode, that's going to help me do that. And I would greatly, greatly appreciate it. So friend, listen, wherever you are listening or watching the show, be sure to subscribe. And if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to give me a thumbs up and leave me a comment below. I love connecting with each and every one of you. Friend, that's all for today. I want you to step out. I want you to step outside your comfort zone today and do something different, right? Do something different and trust God. Have the kind of faith that Abraham did, because he's got you. God's got you every step of the way. And then I'll meet you back here next week, my friend, for another episode of a Faithful God podcast.